there is still things that the Lord want to teach us. There is still things that we got to walk through. See, God is a God of miracles, not a God of miracle. We see the hand of God throughout our lives, not just one chapter in our life. God is a God that blesses his people. Good evening, good evening, good evening. And thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you for joining me tonight. So tonight I am just joining you for a yet another Bible study, or just to study with you and talk a little bit about warriors in the faith. Warriors in the faith. So we talking about this word of God, right? And this here in this Christian journey is a warrior's game. It's a game of warriors that are on the battlefield for Christ. The definition of a warrior is a brave and experienced soldier. And tonight we're going to study a little bit about one of God's mightiest warriors. Now, I'm sure you can think of a lot of different warriors in this body of Christ. I know you can think about a lot of warriors in your church, hopefully, a lot of warriors in your life, prayer warriors, warriors for the faith, warriors in the word. But tonight we just going to go right to this biblical text and pull out some of these warriors that was written about so many years ago. And you know, one of the warriors that, I know you're thinking of a lot of ones, but listen, one of the warriors I'm going to be talking about tonight, just one, and that's Moses. So we're going to be talking just a little bit about that warrior in the faith. So tonight we're going to dive into this Old Testament book of Exodus. We're going to be chit-chatting about this warrior Moses. Now, some of us may be familiar with Moses and familiar with Moses, the call on Moses' life. Some of us, from the very beginning of his life, the call on his life. Some of us may be familiar with that, but some of us may not. So let me tell you about this great man of faith. I'm just going to give you a snippet about this great man of faith. Moses loved God. He was used by God. He walked with God. He talked with God. And he was buried by God. That's all we really need to know about Moses, isn't it? That he walked with God. He loved God. He talked with God. He was used by God. And he was buried by God himself. That's really all we need to know about Moses. We don't need to know where Moses' feet went. We don't need to know what Moses has said out of his mouth. We don't need to know anything about Moses other than his relationship with God. See, that's what is left in this blueprint. Yes, we know all of the details, a lot of the details about Moses' life, but when you sum it up, that's what it is right here. Moses was a true warrior indeed. And he had walked through some things. See, Moses didn't start off with that testimony. He had walked through some things. He walked through some transitions in his life. He went from the very beginning being a target. People was out to kill Moses. Even before he knew his own name, people was out to kill Moses. Moses had been through some things. He had a journey in his life, but he also had a call on his life. And tonight, I just want to dare you to just take a second to look back on your own life. What has God brought you through? Where did you start and where are you now? Take a look back on the miracles that God has done in your life. The places that he has brought you from, the things that he has seen you through. Take a look back over your life of the things that you deserve but you didn't get. See, Moses had walked through some things. He didn't have a pretty story. You know, Moses did not have an easy journey. What has your life been like? And where are you going? See, at the end, we pick up with his testimony in the very beginning that he was used by God, that he loved God, that he worshiped, and he was even buried by God. Yes, he had some hills and valleys, but yes, he had some destiny. He was an overcomer and a great warrior for the faith. He was God's warrior. So let's jump in. Let's jump into this book of Exodus and take a look at what we need to glean from this Moses. We're going to pitch a tent right where he was pitched, where these Israelites was pitched. So grab your Bibles if you have them. And let's camp right here in the Word of God. Exodus 33, 1 through 16. That's where we're going to jump in tonight. Exodus 33, 1 through 16. This Old Testament book. God said to Moses, I'm reading from the Message version. God said to Moses, now go. Get on your way from here, you and the people you brought up from the land of Egypt. Head for the land which I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I will send an angel ahead of you, and I'll drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. That means all of their enemies. God gonna drive out all of their enemies. In a land flowing with milk and honey. But I won't be with you in person. You're such a stubborn, hard-headed people, lest I destroy you on the journey. I ain't going with you because you acting up. And listen, as you act up, you going to have to go by yourself. Because if I go with you, I just might end up destroying you. That's what the Lord is saying. When the people heard this harsh verdict, they were plunged into gloom and wore long faces. When these people heard what God said about them, no one put on jewelry. God said to Moses, tell the Israelites, you're one hard-headed people. I couldn't stand being with you for even a moment. Come on, Message version. I can't stand even being with you for a moment. I'd destroy you. So take off all your jewelry until I figure out what to do with you. So the Israelites stripped themselves of their jewelry from Mount Horeb on. Moses used to take the tent, which is the tent of meeting, and set it up outside the camp some distance away. He called it the tent of meeting. Anyone who sought God would go to the tent of meeting outside the camp. It went like this. When Moses would go to the tent, all the people would stand at attention. Each man would take his position at the entrance of his own tent, and with his eyes on Moses until he entered the tent of meeting. Whenever Moses entered the tent of meeting, the pillar of cloud descended on the entrance to the tent, and God spoke with Moses. All the people would see the pillar of cloud at the entrance to the tent, stand at attention, and then bow down and worship, each man at the entrance to his own tent. Pay close attention to that. And God spoke to Moses face to face as neighbors speak to one another. When he would return to the camp, his attendant, the young man Joshua, stayed. He didn't leave the tent of meeting. Moses said to God, look, you tell me, lead these people, but you don't let me know whom you're going to send with me. You tell me I know you well and you are special to me. If I am so special, this is Moses talking to God, let me in on your plans. That way I will continue to be special to you. Don't forget, these are your people and your responsibility. God said to Moses, my presence will go with you. I'll see the journey to the end. And Moses replied back to God, if your presence doesn't take the lead here, call this trip off right now. So what's going on in this text? It's a lot of text, right? What's going on in this text? A lot is going on in this text. Moses is having this conversation with God about these stiff-necked people, these Israelites. And God is saying, listen, these people off the hook. And I'm not going with them because I'm going to destroy them. And Moses is pleading for these people. But he's also saying, hey, and he has done that in the past. But he also is saying, hey, God, if you don't go with me, I ain't going. We can stay right here in this wilderness. I ain't taking step one foot nowhere unless you go with me. So we see two things in this text. We see the conversation that Moses is having with God about these people, but we also see Moses' worship process, that he would go to this tent of meeting, he would meet with God, this cloud would come, but these stiff-necked people would stand in front of their house while was at the tent of meeting with God himself. They'd stand at their door and they would also bow down and worship. So it's two things going here. God is calling these people stiff-necked, hard-headed. But these same people, as Moses go to meet with God, they're worshiping God in front of their own house. Where's the disconnect? Where's this disconnect? These people stood at attention. These people bowed down when Moses was going to worship and talk with God. Where's the disconnect? Let's talk about it. See, Moses was serious, and he knew God was serious too. But he also knew some other things about God. He knew that God kept his word. He had seen God work. He had a part of that journey that Moses was on that we talked about earlier. God was with Moses. He was with Moses. And he shown himself to Moses. And he did mighty works through Moses. He had seen God keep his promises. He had seen him walk them through the plagues. He had seen them drive these Israelites out of Egypt under his leadership, under Moses' leadership. He had seen that God was a promise keeper and a miracle worker. He knew the importance of God leading. He knew the importance of keeping his hand in God's hands. He knew the importance of putting his trust in God and that God would always follow through. But what about these people? Where's the disconnect? See, Moses' story is not unlike the people in this camp. See, Moses knew hardship, but these people knew hardship too. These Israelite people, they came from a not exact similar background as Moses, but they had some hardship too. They were enslaved. They were beaten. They were worked to the bone, double the work given to them at times. They were hunted just like Moses. Those men babies was being killed. That same people, that same thing that happened to Moses happened to their fathers, their sons, their brothers. They were too persecuted just like Moses. They had lost something just like Moses. These people had seen also not only that there is hardship in life, but that God also delivers. These people, these Israelite people, see, Moses started his journey out of the presence of the people, but a lot of his journey with God was in the presence of these people. These people saw at the hand of God through Moses what God could perform. They had also been there during the 10 plagues. They had also seen the devil pass over the death angel pass over their door. They had seen this manna from heaven. They seen the Red Sea part. They seen that there is hardship, but they also seen that there is a deliverer just like Moses. Where is the disconnect? They had seen this cloud hover over this tent, that the presence of the Lord was with these people in fire and in a cloud. They had seen that. They seen water come out of a rock. They too had worshiped at their own tents. But yet God called them out. God said about these people, tell the Israelites, you are one hard-headed people. I can't stand being with you even for a moment. This is the Message version. I destroy you. So take off all that jewelry until I figure out what to do with you. Now listen, as I read this, immediately in my mind, my childhood came up. This really resonated with me because I remember some of these very words coming out of the mouth of my parents. You hard-headed. Get yourself together. You better start listening. You hard-headed. Get up to that room until your father come home because I don't know what to do with you. Or wait a minute. You sit right there until I figure out what I'm going to do with you. You hard-headed. See, those are the words that came out of my very own parents. Not only to me, but I'm going to tell to my siblings too. In my home, this was the banter of an exhausted parent that just was at their wits' end. They knew I knew better, but they knew I didn't do better. So I had to ask myself, with such similar backgrounds, Moses and these hard-headed people, Where was the disconnect? What was the difference between Moses being a great warrior and these stiff-necked people? And I think tonight we can learn some key things from this. These Israelites that was in the same place as Moses, in the wilderness, seeing some of the same things that Moses was seeing, and Joshua was seeing, and Aaron was seeing, and Miriam was seeing. Why did they end up a stiff-necked people? Why did they end up just getting this chastisement from God, this verbal lashing from God that could resemble one exhausted parent? See, one thing in studying this book of Exodus, one thing that really stood out to me was right in the beginning of the book. Right when we get introduced to these people in Egypt, they were complaining. They were complaining to the Lord about what they were going through. In Exodus 2:23, it says, during that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned. They complained in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of slavery went up to God. So we know right here they was bumping their gums. Now listen, they were crying out to God because they was in a rough situation. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with talking to God about the situation that you're in, crying out to him, groaning to him, really just lamenting and putting yourself before him to help you. That's what they should have done. And that's what they were doing in the beginning. Moses was also doing the same thing. Moses was also doing the same thing. When we meet him, Moses is having conversations with God, he's complaining too. He's protesting with God. He's saying, listen, in Exodus chapter 4:10, Moses says to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. He's saying, listen, Lord, I got problems. I can't do what you want me to do. Just can't do it. I'm just complaining. I don't want to do it. Have my brother come with me. Have somebody else do it. I don't want to do it. He's complaining. Moses is groaning right back at God. He can't even do what God. So we see them doing the same thing, but for different reasons. See, Moses is complaining out to God in his own frailty, right? These children of Israel is complaining out to God by what is being oppressed upon them. Boy, they starting in the same place complaining. They not happy with what's happening in their situation. And don't we go there sometimes? Sometimes we just get to complaining. We not happy with, listen, I'm a complainer all day, every day. We just complain about our situation. Whether we being oppressed, whether we being depressed, whether we pressing somebody else. But these Israelites, they kept bumping their gums. They didn't know how to control their tongue. See, they complained at the very beginning and God answered through Moses. Moses was their answer prayer. But they just didn't know how to hold that. They just didn't know how to hold once the prayer is answered. What do we learn about God? What do we learn about his faithfulness? See, they just kept on bumping their gums. And one thing that we learn about a warrior, someone who is brave in the faith, someone who is fearless, someone who will hold up that bloodstained banner, they know they got to go through. They know if they've been in the battle, they know there's going to be some loss. They know there's going to be some hardship. They know they're going to get hungry sometimes. They know they're going to get thirsty sometimes. They know they're going to have to pitch a tent sometimes and wait and stay. They know that. They know that sometimes they just got to wait till the enemy shows up so they can fight the battle. They got to fight the enemy. They know that. But did these Israelites know that? See, by chapter 15 of Exodus, we pick up with them after the deliverance has gone down. See, God sent Moses and answered their prayer and delivered them out of the hands of slavery, parted that Red Sea, as we all know about. They're now in the wilderness. They now have been delivered. They now are on the other side. All that has gone down. And we hear them by chapter 15 pumping up God. We hear them raising a roof. We hear them singing a song of deliverance unto the Lord. Oh, Lord, you've been so good. Oh, Lord, you done this for me. Oh, Lord, you've been worked it out. Oh, Lord, I thank you for doing this. Oh, Lord, you are mighty. Oh, Lord, you are wonderful. Oh, Lord, you are powerful. Oh, Lord, I thank you for working in my life. These children of Israel, along with Moses, is praising God. And I mean, they rejoicing in God's triumphant hand. They feeling him after the miracle. After the miracle. After the miracle. It's all about God and his worship. But by the end of chapter 15, that same chapter that they've been praising, they were back to complaining again. In the same chapter. In the same chapter. And listen, I think we can learn something from this, saints. That sometimes on the other side of our miracle, and we still in this chapter where we should be rejoicing, check your tongue. When we still in the same chapter where we got the car we prayed for, we can't complain that gas is so high. Now we can, but should we? Right? In the miracle of praying for a house, and God has delivered. In the same chapter he delivered the house, we can't complain that the house payment is too high. In the same chapter that God has delivered us a child, we can't therefore look at that baby and be mad because they crying in the middle of the night. Stay in your season of rejoicing. Stay in your season of rejoicing. God is still the same. God still delivered the miracle. Recognize that. And I mean, and I'm guilty of this all day, right? But after the miracle, they complained by end of chapter 15. They couldn't find some water in 3 days. In 3 days. And they were going in on Moses. They were like, listen, we need some water. We done got out here. We on our, like they were on their own. After 3 days, still in the same chapter. And then in chapter 16, a little bit later now, after leaving Egypt, they complained again about something to eat. Crying, complaining. And I'm talking about in a short duration. The second thing, see, the first thing we can learn about these people is that they're complainers. The second thing we can learn about these people is they're impatient. In a short chapter, they complaining. After the deliverance, they wanted the Lord to just show up and show up right away. They didn't want to have to be inconvenienced at all. Here they was, 400 years of slavery in Egypt, 3 days in the wilderness, and they complaining. They didn't want to have to be inconvenienced at all. See, and I think sometimes that's where we live. I think sometimes that's where we kind of pitch our tent. That after we've been delivered, after we've got the miracle and got the blessing, we don't think that we have to go through nothing else. We still got to go through. We still got to go through. There is still things that the Lord want to teach us. There is still things that we got to walk through. See, God is a God of miracles, not a God of miracle. We see the hand of God throughout our lives, not just one chapter in our life. God is a God that blesses his people, not bless his people. And these Israelites, they had a hard time with that. They had a hard time with accepting that sometimes you got to lean in the hands of the Lord. Sometimes he might give you a meal, but you got to pick up your own fork. Sometimes it ain't going to be comfortable. They didn't want to wait on God. They couldn't wait for Moses to come down from the mountain. They couldn't wait till they got water. They couldn't wait till they got food. They couldn't wait on the Lord to supply. That's what we learn about these people. The other thing we learn is that they're sinful. Right here in chapter 16 of Exodus, we find them not even following the instructions. When God do give them manna, the Lord gave instructions about it. The Lord said, hey, I'm going to give you a fresh blessing every morning. Keep what I give you for that one day. By that next day, you're going to get a whole new blessing. Well, these people said, listen, some of them said, hey, we want to store it up. We're going to take that one day blessing and try to add it to more and more and more and save it. These people were sinful. They did not follow the instruction of the Lord. And they found, hey, you can't do that. When the Lord say, do it this way, it's got to be done that way. They couldn't store up their blessings. They had to lean on God to supply every day. So some of them even got so mad. Moses said, look, Lord, they ready to stone me, right? Seemingly all this happened within a couple of months after leaving Egypt. Like, come on, it's a couple of months. Now, I'm all over these people, and I know it sounds terrible. I'm not judging these people, but we can learn from that. We can learn from that. The most important thing we can learn from that is that they didn't want more of God. In chapter 20, they declared, in chapter 20, verse 18, now all the people witnessed the thundering when Moses would go talk to the Lord, and the mountain would thunder and lightning would flash, the power of God on full display, the sound of the trumpet, the mountain was smoking, all of this stuff. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. Then they said to Moses, you speak with us, and we will hear. But don't let God speak with us, lest we die. You speak to us about what God is saying, but don't let us speak to God, because we gonna die. They didn't want more of God. They didn't know that they was no different from Moses. They didn't know that they could have a relationship with God just like Moses. They didn't know that God wanted a relationship with them. Yes, he did set boundary, because the Lord said, hey, don't let them come up close, because if they do, they're going to die. But they didn't even want to know him. They didn't even really want to know him. Even when Moses came down the mountain and his light was shining so much, his face from meeting with the Lord, they said, listen, put a veil on. Right? So that just tells me, in my interpretation, they didn't want to know more. They wanted the pastor to preach a message, but they didn't want to go to the word themselves. You know what I'm saying? They wanted somebody to pray for them, but they didn't really want to lay out before God themselves. They didn't really want a deeper relationship. They didn't want to draw near to him. See, there's a few things more that I talked about tonight that we can learn about these people. They were sinful. They were complainers. They didn't really want to know more of God. These people, right? They didn't want to draw near to him. They didn't want to see him or know him deeply. We learned about these people. They were impatient. These are the ones that God calls stiff-necked. And these are the ones that did not see the promised land. These people who bowed before God in front of their own tent. When Moses went to talk to God, they stood at attention and they bowed before him. But there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect. See, that flesh started to disconnect. That flesh started to long for things outside of their time. That flesh started to not really fear God in the way that they wanted to. Their flesh started to rear up and not control their tongue. Their flesh started to take a little bit of separation from God and true worship. Moses started the same way, but he didn't end the same way. He drew near to God. So much so, he really wanted to see God. He wanted to know him in his fullness. He wanted his presence. And he done had some experience. The burning bush, he had some experiences. You would think that would be enough. But no, Moses said, I want to know you, Lord. I want to know you more deeply. I want to know you. He even asked God to show him more of himself. He really wanted to know God. And in this passage that we talked about tonight, we see that on full display. Moses said, listen, Lord, listen. If you ain't going with me, we ain't going. I'm going to stay in this wilderness forever unless you go with me. I'm going to eat manna. I'm going to do whatever I need to do as long as you're with me. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I may not see what I need to see. I may not see the promised land. I don't care. As long as you with me, I'm not moving. As long as you with me, I'm not moving. But if you tell me to move and you do not go with me, I'm not moving. That's a warrior. That's a warrior. He's putting God in his presence first before anything that Moses wanted or needed. See, Moses wanted to draw near to God and stay in his presence. He didn't want to live life without him. And he didn't plan to live life without him. I'm down to the very end, God. Down to stay with you until the very end. No matter where I go, I don't want to go without you. No matter where life takes me next, it has to be with you. That's the difference between this warrior of God and these stiff-necked people. Moses wanted God. No matter if the people wanted to stone him, no matter if they was grumbling and complaining, no matter if they weren't comfortable all the time, Moses said, I'm with you no matter what. Because he knew that God was with him through all of his ups and downs. I can't desert the one who never deserted me, even when I'm going through. And if I draw near to him, he will draw near to me. Moses knew. Even as he asked God to see him, God said, you can't see me. But God gave him a gift instead. He hid him in the rock and let his glory pass by him. Moses got to experience God in a way. He didn't get exactly what he wanted, but he got something. Because God honored him. Listen, we can learn tonight that we have to draw near to God. We have to really want him. We have to renew our minds and try to control that flesh. So we won't be the stiff-necked people that God talked about, that he didn't even want to deal with. These same people that he had worked in their lives. The same people that stood at the door and seemingly worshiped him. We have to transform our mind and renew our mind to the things of God and not the things of this world. Don't be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Now, as we head into this 2 weeks, I'm going to leave you with this. Be a warrior for God. I'm going to try to be a warrior for God. Be a warrior for God. I'm going to try to be a warrior for God. Start seeking after God and not after the things of this world. He wants you. He wants you. Won't you want him too? Seek after his will. And above all, seek his presence. Draw near to him, saying, draw near to him, draw near to the Father, and you too shall be changed. See, the more Moses got up with God and the more he got in fellowship and relationship with God, he was changed. I mean, his face was changed. Yes, we know that glow, right? He really glowed up. His face was changed. But listen, his father-in-law Jethro even came, and after he heard about what was happening through Moses, he came to the wilderness himself. Now, who comes to the wilderness? Jethro came to the wilderness and said, listen, this is the true God. Listen, saint, draw near to him. Draw near to him. People around you may even recognize it. Your face may look different. Your life may look different. And so can your strength. Be a warrior for God. There is a God, and he has intimate relationship with his people. Let him strengthen you. Let him strengthen you. Go in peace, brother, and go in peace, sister, because God is still on the throne, and he loves me, and he loves you. God bless you. Have a good night.